Less than a month to go now until Newark elects the new mayor, and two candidates have made separate appearances on the very same program. It's called Newark at a Crossroads, airing on NJTV and WNET. Shavar Jeffries explaining his preference to expand school choice without public vouchers, and Ross Baraka defending a letter he wrote requesting leniency for a convicted gang member.
We're moving off of like Operation Ceasefire, programs that the Justice Department have come up with that talk about involving ex-offenders, gang leaders, to help us to begin to reduce a crime in our neighborhood, to stop the recidivism that's going on in our community.
When we're talking about public policy, we'll think, what's the optimal way to produce the results we want? I think the best way to expand choice for families is through the public framework, because there's greater public accountability.
Steve Adubato co-hosted the program. He joins us now. We welcome you back, my friend. Always a pleasure.
Always good to be here, Mike.
They have very strong points of view, and frequently those points of view are aimed at one another. Each has accused each other of a dirty campaign. Did that come through in this?
You know, I've watched your interviews with them as well, and it is clear they don't like each other. They don't trust each other. There's, you know, we asked each candidate, Rafael P. Romano and I, the two hosts of the show, we asked them to say, not something nice, but what do you respect about the other person? Boy, do they have a hard time with that. I mean, they don't.
It's visceral.
On the issue of crime, you would think that, look, big issue, you know, you reported it last night, that the New Jersey Attorney General's office come in to help out because violent crime has been so bad with state troopers coming in to help out. Barack, on one hand, saying he has absolutely every right to be with gang members in terms of engaging them because they're so critical to fighting crime in terms of having a relationship. And Shavar Jeffries turned around saying, how could you coddle those guys when those are the bad guys, meaning their views are so diametrically opposed that there's no common ground on the issue of education, miles apart as well.
But they seem to both agree they don't like the state control. Neither one has much nice to say about the superintendent, Cami Anderson.
Well, you're right, but Shavar Jeffries, it's interesting. He was open to different ideas in terms of charters and other approaches. But I will say, Baraka said, first thing, Cami Anderson has to go, state control has to go. And while Shavar Jeffries said we need local control again, I would argue that Baraka was more clear that the number one thing that has to be done is get rid of the state-imposed superintendent, Cami Anderson.
Baraka's part of the system over there. He's a principal.
Central High School.
Central High School. And Jeffries actually has tried to use that against him, calling him a failed principal.
You know, it's so tough because on one hand, Jeffries turns around and says, well, what are you proud of at Central High School? The kids are failing. Well, a lot of kids in Newark are failing. It's a question of how bad it is at certain schools. And who really knows? Because you can play with numbers one way or another. Jeffries also hits Baraka and says 70%, you know, crime increase, or excuse me, increase in murder rate in the South Ward where he's the councilman. And Baraka turns around and says, wait a minute, what do you know about the city of Newark? You were number 3 in the Attorney General's office where he was working there. You don't really know the streets. You don't really know what it takes. And I'll tell you, again, they don't give each other much credit at all. And whoever wins this race, I think is going to have to work with the other person because Newark needs all the help it can get, Mike.
Is it that divided? Is this city that divided at this time?
You know, as a Newarker, born and raised in Newark, I want to say no. But in the post-Cory Booker era, it seems to me that it is. It really is, because...
So for all the flack that Booker took, he was a unifying force?
Yeah, he was. I mean, even those who didn't like Cory Booker knew that he was so popular, that he had so much support around the country in terms of celebrities and others who would give money. You take that Facebook money, you could not like Cory Booker all you want, but you're taking that Facebook money for the Newark Public Schools. You could dislike Cory Booker, but if he's with Oprah and Oprah helps bring praise to the city, you can be okay with Cory Booker, but there is no Cory Booker anymore in the city.
Would the voters look for the candidate who's the closest to Booker, or are they ready to turn in a different direction and then go for whoever they perceive to be the least like Booker?
That's a great question. My sense is this. I think the voters, on one hand, think that Jeffries is more like Booker in some ways because they went to Ivy League schools. Their background is very different, believe me. Jeffries grew up in Newark, lost his mom at Tim, as you know.
Right.
Baraka is saying, I'm the anti-Cory Booker. And a lot of people who maybe didn't like Cory Booker are saying this is a way to go in a very different direction. This is not about Cory Booker, but Cory Booker's his presence is felt to some degree here.
Do you think, only about 30 seconds left, that they achieved what they intended to achieve when they came before your cameras?
Well, by bashing each other, they did. By telling each other what they believed in terms of their philosophies, they did to some extent. But you're going to have to do more work if you're a Newarker to find out more. And ultimately, I'll say this, Mike, finally, this race is not just about Newark, even though it's the mayor of Newark. I believe that it impacts the state of New Jersey and the nation because Newark is so critical to all of our futures.
Newark at a Crossroads airing when again?
It's on NJTV, 12:30 on Saturday. It repeats again Sunday morning, 8 and 12, and also on our sister, our parent, if you will, WNET. I got to plug Saturday morning at 8:30 a.m. with my Emmy Award-winning colleague, Rafael P. Roman.
Congrats to you and congrats to Rafael as well.
Thank you, Mike, as
Steve
always.
Adubato, always a pleasure, my friend.
Same here.